again, the Russia the Russia angle, there's three different dimensions to this that we need to distinguish. There's the specific relationship between Russia and the Trump campaign. I think there are undeniably connections there. How deep they go, what variety, how far they penetrate, that's a question that is still to be determined, although there's clearly some connection there. Number two, we know that Russia engages very overtly in Europe in the support of far-right parties and has engaged in a brutal campaign in Syria, and that their agenda is not to somehow indirectly fight imperialism. They're a far-right petrostate that wants to undermine the European Union, that wants to undermine Western institutions, not to improve upon them, but to devolve into more sort of open energy conflict and expanded sphere of influence. And number three, there are ways of management that the Putin government implements in terms of PR, in terms of public communication, in terms of strategy, that whether or not they are being formally imported, whether or not this is just the nature of the modern reality of any type of far-right authoritarian petro government, which is what the modern Republican Party and Donald Trump is, in certain sense, it doesn't matter. We're in an age of non-linear information warfare. And these are the sort of practical questions that we need to parse apart in terms of what we cover, how we cover it, not responding to the daily outrage cycle, and distinguishing what is and isn't actually important and what is and isn't actually real. So this is a segment from a piece on nonlinear warfare, which was made by Adam Curtis, who we've mentioned many times. And he gives you an introduction to a guy named Surkov, who is a top PR strategist for Vladimir Putin, who's implemented all of these sort of novel mechanisms for manipulating and adjusting public opinion. This is a 2014 piece, Nonlinear Warfare. We're going to watch about a minute of it because it helps contextualize all of the massive avalanche of confusion and lies that we just witnessed.
A new system of political control. And to understand how this is happening, you have to look to Russia and to a man called Vladislav Surkov, who is a hero of our time. Surkov is one of President Putin's advisors and has helped him maintain his power for 15 years. But he has done it in a very new way.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
He came originally from the avant-garde art world, and those who have studied his career say that what Surkov has done is import ideas from conceptual art into the very heart of politics. His aim is to undermine people's perception of the world, so they never know what is really happening. Surkov turned Russian politics into a bewildering, constantly changing piece of theatre. He sponsored all kinds of groups, from neo-Nazi skinheads to liberal human rights groups. He even backed parties that were opposed to President Putin. But the key thing was that Surkov then let it be known that this was what he was doing, which meant that no one was sure what was real or fake. As one journalist put it, it's a strategy of power that keeps any opposition constantly confused, a ceaseless shape-shifting that is unstoppable because it's indefinable.
So, I think that that's something that's very much worth thinking about in the modern, in the news cycle we're in right now. Now, I doubt that we're going to find out that Trump bundlers are, secretly funding protesters or anything like that. But undoubtedly, we already know of people who infiltrate movements and engage in acts of sabotage and violence to undermine them and get people arrested. That certainly happened all over North Dakota. There's no doubt that that's happening in protests across the country. But whether or not it's overt and strategic, the way some of it might be around Putin, or just the sort of product of having an extremist agenda you're implementing on a country governed and presided over by an unstable, dangerous personality, the constant onslaught of information, confusion, dishonesty and unsettled dishonesty is the sort of environment we're in. And I think that, it's like many aspects of the danger we're in now, we're taking things that we were already experiencing to their logical extreme. People are already seeing the imbalances. Well, wait a second. Why do we have mass austerity and cuts while there seems to be unlimited resources to recapitalize banks without any accountability after they've destroyed the economy, removed millions of people from their homes, and destroyed a massive amount of collective wealth? The economy is recovering, but many jobs are part-time, low-paid, and, over 95% of new sort of wealth created is going to the top 1%. So these sort of contradictions and lack of logic were already sort of apparent, but they're now going to be very accelerated. And part of the answer is just in what we saw over these past weekend. It is in those protests, because the protests are real life. They're not mediated through all of these platforms. And they give people an opportunity to actually engage with each other in real exchange and real actual experience, which is how you build a grip on community. It's how you build a grip on reality, and it's how you engage in actual persuasion in politics. So it couldn't be more important to create those stakes for reality, and also to really decide, Donald Trump wants to call Miller Streep a loser. Maybe we'll cover it because it's funny, because the contrast between them is hilarious. But that's not where the game is.
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Over. Subscribe.